I'm Deanna Rodin, Associate Director at the Career Center at Hofstra University. We are very excited to welcome you to our third online career chat this semester. Today I'll be discussing interviewing and how to handle job offers. And for the second half of our chat, Suzanne Dagger, the Director of our Career Center, will be joining us. So many of you have submitted questions and we're ready to go. The first question is from Daniela, and she asks, I get really nervous during interviews and I feel like this holds me back. What can I do? That is a very common thing, Daniela. Most people are very nervous during the interview process. It's not a very natural situation to be in, but again, with practice, that's the best way to beat those nerves. You can definitely feel better and less nervous if you're prepared going into an interview, so preparation is key. You can prepare, of course, by knowing yourself, knowing the position, doing some research, and also definitely by practicing ahead of time, maybe through some mock interviews through the Career Center, going to an Interview to Impress workshop, or viewing one of our Interview to Impress web shops. This will give you everything you need to know. But really the key to beating those nerves is just going on more interviews, and eventually you'll get better at it. Jessica asks, do I need to wear a suit on an interview? Most likely yes. Depending on the industry that you're in, more often than not, it's better to be conservative and professional and wear a suit. You know, it could be something if you're in a more relaxed industry where you could ask the interviewer, you know, what the dress code is, but otherwise it's better to dress a little bit above that code to impress the people that you're interviewing with. We do suggest to students that you should have that your suit ready to go before you plan on, you know, interviewing. It's something where you don't want last minute to be searching for a suit. It's better to prepare to make sure it fits you well and that it also fits your budget. So don't be, you know, worried about going to thrift stores or other discount stores. As long as it fits you well and it's clean and pressed, then it's fine. But yeah, you should probably wear a suit. Danny asks, why do employers seem to ask me about group projects from school, and why is this even relevant? Danny, that's a really good question by an interviewer. They're looking to see how you work in a team. That's usually the purpose behind a question like that. What's your role? How do you communicate and work with other people? So the best thing to do when you're asked a question like that is to have a really good example of a group project that you worked on. Walk them through the situation, the task that you were given as a group, and what you specifically did as a member of that group, and then how that project turned out. And if you give them all that information, it will probably give them a good indication of how you work in a group. Jamie asks, can I ask for reimbursement for relocating for a job? Yes, Jamie, you can. It is very typical if you're being recruited for a position that's out of state or out of the area that you're currently living in. You could ask the employer if they do cover any or all relocation fees, but just be prepared that they might say no, and you might have to cover those costs yourself. Anthony wants to know, I have accepted a job offer for an unpaid internship, but I have to travel to New York City for the internship. This is very costly. What can I do? Anthony, this is a good question. Many students that go to Hofstra are interning in New York City. It's right in our backyard, and those are great opportunities. It could be something, if it's you said it's an unpaid internship, to see if they will give you a travel stipend or some sort of, you know, fees that you're, you know, pay you back for any fees that you incur for traveling on the subway or the train. Again, they might say no, and that's okay. You know, just be gentle and polite when you're asking the employer for that, and, you know, be prepared to have to foot the bill yourself. You know, you can't put a price on experience, right? Michael asks, I had an interview with a company 3 weeks ago, and I have not heard anything yet. Am I no longer a candidate? Not necessarily, Michael. You could still be in the running for that position. A good thing to ask at the initial interview is to ask the employer whether or not, or sorry, how they plan on going through with the process. So what it's going to look like, how fast they're looking to move along, or what the next step will be in the process. Some question along those lines will give you a hint as to, is this going to be a few weeks, or should I be expecting a few days? Who and when will I be contacted? But if you didn't ask any of those questions and you're unsure and you've waited 3 weeks, you can always follow up with an email just asking for the status of your application and see if they respond. If they don't respond, I wouldn't ask again. I would just let the process play out. But what's the worst they could do? They could answer you and ease your concerns, or eventually you'll find out one way or another. But good luck to you. Heather asks, what should I say when they ask me about a weakness? The weakness question. You should have this prepared going into the interview process. The trick to a weakness question is to steer clear of personality flaws. Those are harder to explain, and they can be concerning for potential employers. So it'd be better if you looked into a skill set, perhaps, something that you haven't yet developed but might be helpful to the position. So make sure that the weakness is relevant. It's not completely disconnected from what you're looking to do, but also isn't too concerning. So perhaps it's presentation skills, and then you can talk maybe about a class that you're taking to work on it, or a club or something that you've joined where you're doing some presenting or talking in front of people. So it's always good when you're presenting your weakness in an interview that you're talking about how you're looking to strengthen it. You just don't want to leave it open-ended. You should kind of bring it full circle. Eric wants to know, I once went on an interview where the interviewer asked me how many fire hydrants there were in Manhattan. I had no idea what to say. Why would they ask me this, and how could I possibly answer? Eric, I imagine you are on some sort of case interview. These interviews can be common in areas like finance, where the interviewer doesn't want to know if you're well versed in fire hydrants. The interviewer wants to know how you think. What's your learning style, your processing style? So you really want to break down the problem and talk about how you would figure it out. So whether it's contacting the New York City Fire Department, finding out how many feet apart they put their hydrants, how many blocks there are in New York City, breaking down the process and telling them how you figure it out is really more important than knowing the outright answer to that question. Megan asks, what are employers looking for when they ask you, tell us about yourself? Megan, tell us about yourself is the start to, I would say, probably more than half of the interviews you'll go on. They'll say something like, walk me through your resume, tell me about yourself, and that is certainly something that you should have prepared ahead of time. You don't want it to sound rehearsed. It should come out natural. But again, it's something that introduces you to the interviewers. It sets the stage, and it's an opportunity for you to make the interview go in a way that you would like, a direction you'd like it to go. So you can, of course, start by giving a little bit about background about your education, maybe some relevant jobs or internships, some organizations that you're involved in, but remember to bring it back to the position that you're applying to. Why are you there applying to this position with this particular employer, and bringing it back to them at the end of the tell me about yourself. Steve asks, how can I prepare for an interview? Steve, this is very similar to the question that was asked before. Preparation is key to interviewing. The more you go on, the better. So it's good that you're planning ahead. And the first thing I would tell you to do to prepare for an interview is get to know a little bit about yourself, know your skills and interests, know your resume inside and out, and of course know the type of industry that you're going into, things that are happening in that industry, and things that are going on with that employer. But as far as the Career Center goes, we can help you a lot with preparation. Again, we have a great list of web shops available online through Blackboard. If you go onto the Career Center website, you can sign up for our Blackboard account, and on there we have all of our most popular web shops, workshops on there as web shops, and you can view the Interview to Impress online. We also offer a few of them every semester. So in the spring semester kicks up, we'll have a few each month. So go to an Interview to Impress workshop, get the basic of the interviewing process down, and then follow it up with a mock interview. The Career Center offers mock interviews with employers, usually about 2 times a semester, and then you can schedule a mock interview anytime with one of our career counselors. They're a great experience to have. You get an hour and a half in appointment. We'll even tape you, give you some individual feedback. So it's a really individualized experience, and it's very helpful being prepared for the interview process. Jonathan asks, I just had an interview with Human Resources, and they are asking me back for another interview. Who will this be with? That's a really good question to ask, Jonathan. You should certainly, and you have every right to, and it makes sense to ask HR who you'll be interviewing with. So that's not an answer that I can give you, but you certainly should call the employer back and thank them again and confirm the date and time that you'll be meeting with them, and just politely ask who you'll be interviewing with. It's nice to have names or titles to have an idea and be prepared, but you should certainly know who you're interviewing with. Rachel asks, how do I answer a question where they ask for a specific example? Good question, Rachel. Many times during the interview, they'll ask you a question that's, can you give me an example of a time you showed initiative, or an example of a time, a project failed and what you did. The best way to stay on course with your answer, so that you're not giving them useless information, but you're also making sure to give them the key points that they need to know, is to use the STAR acronym. It stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. So you walk the employer through the situation, the task that you were given, what you specifically did, and how it turned out. What were the results? And if you walk them through those 4 pieces of information, you know that you'll give a concise yet informative answer. Okay, I want to thank you for all of the great questions. Keep writing in, and we'll be taking a very short break. And after the break, our Director of the Career Center, Suzanne Dagger, will be joining us. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Dagger, Director of Career Services at Hofstra University, and we will be continuing our discussion on interviewing and job offers. Okay, so we had a question come in from Eileen. She says, I read that companies are afraid to hire seasoned workers because they fear we jump ship when the economy picks back up. How can we overcome this? Well, I think one of the best ways of overcoming this concern is that you need to be honest, and you need to let an employer know that you are committed to the job, and that you understand that this is a common fear, but that they can feel rest assured that you are committed to that job and that opportunity. I think addressing what we sort of call red flags in an interview in a professional and delicate way is the smartest way to go about it. Okay, so our next question is from Mark, and he asks, how do I know how much I should be paid? What should I ask for? This is a really great question, Mark, and certainly before you even go out on an interview, and really before you even start applying for jobs, you should know what type of salary is common for that type of job. One easy way of finding out what you're worth and what this job would normally pay is to go on a website like salary.com. Sites like these typically have free salary calculators. They also have options for you to pay for a report. I don't recommend doing that. You don't need to do that. But when you go to something like salary.com, you have the ability to choose your job title and what zip code. And that way you get a really good sense of what that type of job is worth in that geographic area. On top of that, I would also ask people in the industry. You have opportunities throughout the year to ask people on campus at job fairs or at networking events, and just kind of dig around and say, you know, I'm just wondering, for someone at my level and for this type of job, what could I expect? Could you give me a range? And that way you're informed when you go out there. You can also use a website like the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which is put out by the federal government, and you can get a national average for a salary. And you can always ask the Career Center, and we have a good sense of what jobs are usually offering. Okay, so our next question is from Jenny, and she asks, I went on an interview and they were really cold and distant. Why would they act this way? Well, Jenny, this is, for the most part, this is actually called a stress interview. It's not that the interviewers are being mean and they're really angry and this is a really bad company to work for. Now, could that happen? Yeah, but more times than not, this is called a stress interview, and they're doing it on purpose because they want to see how you react in a stressful situation, and they want to see that you can handle yourself appropriately. There's no real strong recommendation that I have as far as how to handle this, but just knowing when you're experiencing it, what's happening, will put you at ease. You could just say to yourself, okay, this is a stress interview. It's not because they don't like me. It's not because they don't like what they're hearing. They're just trying to see how I react under stress. So let me keep myself cool and collected and move forward. All right. William asks, what if I can't answer a question? How do I handle this? All right. Well, this can happen during an interview, whether your brain just kind of freezes or you genuinely just can't think of an answer. I think there's a couple of ways of handling this. The first and foremost, I wouldn't try and make something up on the spot. When you try and make something up on the spot, your body language is going to be very evident. The employer is going to know that you're just, flubbing it up and you're trying to come up with something really quick. So I would recommend that you say to the employer, you know what, I can't think of an answer right now, but can we come back to that at the end of the interview? I think by the end of the interview I'll be able to think of an answer. Then it's your responsibility at the end of the interview to remember to address it. Now, hopefully you'll have thought of something, but if you genuinely still can't think of an answer, you can, certainly ask the employer for clarification at any point. But if you generally still can't think of an answer for the question, I would say to the employer, you know what, I know I didn't answer such and such question. Would it be okay if I follow back up with you either over the phone or through email? I think with just, a couple of hours or just giving me some time to think about it, I think I could think of something. In that case, I think just handling yourself maturely and being honest, the employer will appreciate that more than you trying to make something up on the spot. Okay, Nadine asks, should I accept an offer on the spot? Will I seem desperate? Okay, when you receive a job offer, you certainly could accept the offer on the spot, and no, you will not seem desperate. However, I do think you owe it to yourself to take the customary 24 hours to think about the job offer. Most employers anticipate that a candidate will want at least the night to sleep on it, to talk to their family about it. Most employers won't expect that you accept the job on the spot. If you're feeling pressure from the employer that they want you to make a decision right then and there, I actually would say that might be slightly concerning. That's somewhat of a red flag. Most employers can wait one night to get an answer from you. If you feel that you want to accept on the spot, this is your dream job, you're excited, you're happy, you're satisfied with all the benefits, you can accept on the spot and know you won't seem desperate, but I would give yourself the time to think it over. Okay. Kurt asks, what should I do if I get an offer, but I am still interviewing with other companies? All right, good question, Kurt. First thing I would say is, if you get an offer and you're still interviewing with other companies, if you know that's the job you want and you're no longer interested in those other interviews, in any real world situation, you would call up the other interviews, the other employers, and say, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to interview, but I've accepted another offer. However, what you can do is if you get a job offer and you're still interested in those other interviews, if the employer who made you the offer is looking for a decision in the short term, you can call the other employers that you have future interviews with and say to them, I want you to know that I've received another job offer from another company. However, I haven't accepted yet. I am still very interested in your job, in working for you. I'm wondering if there's any way of speeding up the process. Is there any way of scheduling our interview sooner than later, so that way I can make an educated decision because I am genuinely interested in your opportunity. That's the best way of handling it. Okay. Joyce asks, I got a job offer and I have not accepted yet because I think the salary is low. How do I negotiate? Okay. So this is a common question, Joyce, that I get asked often. And the first thing that I would say is first make sure you do your research and make sure you have a good understanding of what salary is typical for that job. And especially in this job market, really having a clear understanding if that type of employer, that industry has cut back on their salaries. Because unfortunately in this job market, many industries have done that because that they know that they can get workers at a quote unquote cheaper price. But if you do want to negotiate on salary, you should do it sooner than later. So ideally, you would get a job offer, they would give you some time to think about it. And let's say they gave you a week to think about it. You would want to call within the first 24 to 48 hours afterwards to start negotiating on salary. The longer you wait, the more apt it's more likely the employer might get annoyed that you sort of waited a significant amount of time to start negotiating. They are expecting your decision by Friday, and you're calling up on Friday to start the process of negotiating. You're sort of extending the process for them when they were expecting to have an answer already. So how do you negotiate is you have to think about why you deserve more money. So before you pick up the phone to start negotiating, you have to really think about, why am I worth more? Have I done related internships? Do I have related work experiences? Make a list for yourself and then call the employer, and you're going to handle yourself very diplomatically, respectfully, and say, I thought about the offer. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to interview with you. However, I have to let you know that I am looking for something a little bit higher. I'm looking for X. And these are the reasons why I think I deserve X amount of money. Is there any room for negotiation here on the salary? And that's how you would start the conversation. Just keep in mind that for entry-level positions, most employers will rarely negotiate beyond 10% of the initial offer. So if the initial offer was $40,000, you can't expect to go much higher than $44,000. Most employers aren't going to start off with an offer at 40 and then jump to 50. It's pretty rare, especially in this job market. So if you're going to negotiate, you do it early on, you're smart about it, you do your research, and you are appropriate and responsible and educated when you're speaking to them on the phone about why you think you deserve a little bit more money. And that's the basics of negotiation. Okay, Tina asks, I am planning on applying for graduate school. Should I mention this during an interview? I don't think I would mention it, Tina, unless it was some type of requirement for the job. Most employers would probably find that as a turnoff, that they would kind of count that against you. So unless it's applicable to the job and they're requiring it on some level, I wouldn't recommend bringing it up because most employers want to know that you're going to be fully dedicated to the job, that you're going to be working the required hours, if not more, and they're not going to want you to be distracted, especially in that first year on the job. Okay, Amelia asks, I have a lot of related internships for the job I want. Can I expect to get more in salary than other candidates? Interesting question. Amelia, I don't know. I think that, again, in this type of job market, anything goes. I would hope that with internships and the more internships you have, that you could expect more in salary. However, most employers expect that their candidates are fully prepared and that they've done internships and that they have lots of related experiences. So I'm not quite confident that just because you've done 2 or 3 internships that would warrant a higher salary than someone else. In fact, those other people probably wouldn't get the job, and that's why you're getting the job, because you have the most experience. So hard to answer, but that would be my best response to you at this point. Okay, Rob asks, how long are interviews and how many rounds can I expect? All right, Rob, well, not knowing what industry you're going into, it's hard to give you a definitive answer. Every industry is different. Every employer is different. Depending on the job, it can be different. But typically, an interview could be anywhere from 15, 20 minutes long to an hour. And how many rounds you could expect? Well, that could be 1 round. It could be with, if it's a small company, it might just be directly with your future supervisor. But with a larger organization, your first round might be with someone, let's say in human resources as a screening interview, and then you might anticipate 1 or 2 more rounds after that with additional supervisors and coworkers. So that way they can see if you're a good fit for the organization and for the team. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This concludes our online career chat on interviewing and job offers. If you'd like to continue this conversation, please call the Career Center at 463-6060 to make an appointment to meet with a counselor, or you could stop in during our walk-in hours, which we call quick question hours, on Monday through Thursdays from 2 to 4 and Fridays from 11 to 1. And I thank you for joining us this semester. Bye-bye.